We've finally reached a season of abundance. What started out slowly due to the drought is finally yielding fresh leaves, flowers, and fruit. The earth gives generously to those who see her gifts. And one of my main goals with this channel is to help my fellow brothers and sisters see better, to see the gifts of nature right in front of you, and to harvest wild growing food and medicine, or to grow your own in the garden. In knowing plants and what to do with them, we can gain confidence, foster gratitude, and experience delight and contentment in our everyday lives. In truth, I've only discovered a small fraction of what the earth has to offer, and already I am overwhelmed with the harvest, and I wish to share it with you in a small way through these videos. That's good arugula. I'm a bit biased because my boyfriend grows this. He's a small-scale organic farmer, and I'm just lucky enough to get some of the things that he grows. Often it's what didn't sell at the market and I'll just get the leftovers. But this I claimed for myself, and it definitely would have sold because this is one of his most popular things that he has. But yeah, I took it for myself. So I think I'm going to make a salad out of some of the things he's given me. Small-scale farming is a very unforgiving job. It's intensive work because it's done mostly or all by hand. And it has insane hours, sometimes starting before sunrise and ending after sunset. And no matter how hard you work, no matter how many hours you put in, there will always be something out of your control. Seeds that didn't germinate, pests that destroy your crops, and either no rain or too much rain. But in spite of that, local farmers still exist, although not many. They do an incredible service by growing the best tasting and highest quality food for their immediate community. And even though it makes no sense to be a farmer by today's standards, because even if everything does go well, you still don't make that much money from it, I'm so grateful and in awe of my local farmers. Anyway, local agriculture is something that I'm passionate about, and I hope to find a better way to support the success of my local small-scale farmers. Thank you, Dan, for growing my lunch today. I have my American basswood flowers here, and I want to make a tincture out of them now. And I haven't made a tincture with them before, so usually when I'm doing something new, I like to consult one of my herbal medicine books that I have, and this one is Making Plant Medicine with Rico Check. And this is great to do because I'd love some recommendations from herbalists who are decades more advanced than I am. And I'm looking for things like, should I use fresh herbs? Should I use it dried? Or, what solvent should I use? It's also called a menstruum. So what menstruum should I use? And then in what ratio of herb to menstruum? So fortunately, Mr. Check has a whole section on linden flowers. And so little leaf linden is in the European tradition. It has a strong herbal tradition in European cultures, and that's Tilia cordata. Now this is Tilia americana, American basswood, but they are closely related, so I'm going to use them interchangeably. However, there could be some slight differences between the species, but I'll use them the same way. So he says, a tincture of dried flower and bract. This is the flower here, and then the bract is this leaf-like structure, and I've dried them, so that's perfect. And then 1:4 ratio of herb to solvent, and then the menstruum or solvent should be 50% alcohol, 30% water, and 20% glycerin, which is neat because I don't use glycerin very often. and then grind the herb and weigh it. Mix the menstruum according to formula. Pour over the dried herb and stopper immediately and shake to incorporate. Linden flower is a nervine which helps with restlessness, overstimulation, anxiety, helps you to calm and relax. It's also traditionally used for colds and flus, especially with fever, because it's a vasodilator, and that means that it dilates, it expands blood vessels, and then that increases the surface area, allowing heat to move to the surface and dissipate, which lowers a fever. The mulberry trees on Dan's property are fruiting right now, so we decided to try harvesting a bunch of them. This method of putting a tarp under the tree and shaking the branches, it worked okay. Mulberries don't ripen all at the same time, so only the very ripe berries fell. Also, there always seems to be a lot of bugs on mulberries, so if that grosses you out, you might want to avoid them, but I think they're worth it. What I don't like about this method is that the super ripe berries can get mushed easily when they hit the tarp, and then they're slightly crushed, so then they don't last that long, and because of this, I felt pressured to use up the mulberries right away so they didn't go bad. The next day, I decided to have a sort of mulberry festival all by myself and make a few recipes with mulberries to use them all up. I started with making mulberry jam bars, and it's pretty much just a layer of crust and then a mulberry filling or kind of jam type of thing and a crumble on top. These turned out so good, and I want to make them again or something similar before the mulberry season is over. Next, I made mulberry fruit roll-ups. So what I did is I mashed the berries over heat and simmered it to evaporate some of the liquid, and then I added in cinnamon, a tiny bit of cardamom, lemon juice, and maple syrup. Then you puree it in some way. I used the blender, and then spread the puree over parchment paper. Then you dehydrate it, or you can bake it on very low heat in the oven. These are super tasty and fun, but they will make your mouth and lips purple. Finally, I made some mulberry jam. I followed a recipe from the Ball canning book. It has a ton of sugar in it, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but if you are canning a recipe to preserve it, you do want to follow a recipe that was designed for preservation. So you can make a low sugar jam, but you can just store it in the fridge and use it up in a couple weeks. It's not something that will stay good for months and months and months. Anyway, Mulberry Festival was a success. On the same property, I have my herb garden. Last year, I had an herb farm, a micro farm, really, in a different town, and I grew culinary and tea herbs as a side business in addition to my full-time job. I did that for 2 years, and it was such a great experience. I learned a lot, but I decided to take a break from it for now. So this garden is just my own for personal use. I had a few plants that I was really excited about fail, which is depressing, but not too surprising. The plants that did make it, though, are doing well. I'm not over here enough to take as much care of my garden as I'd like, but I'm making it work and I'll still get some good harvests from it. During the summer, I spend more of my time in the garden and less of it in the woods, mostly because of ticks. But that's nice because it gives me a good balance between the wild and the cultivated. I'm able to gather local wild food and also grow my favorite plants to use for teas, tinctures, and infused oils. I was just thinking about this meme that I see every once in a while. And so in the background, there's this big raging black storm cloud. And in the foreground, there's this old man working on his farm, completely not paying attention to anything around him. And it says, me tending my silly little garden. I do feel like our world is descending into chaos and depravity in so many ways. And so even though tending your silly little garden might seem trivial, I think it's actually quite important. That could be a physical garden, like a real garden that you're tending to, but it could also be a skill you're working on, or relationships that you're nurturing, or your health or your faith that you're prioritizing. Imagine if every single person was tending their garden. Our world would be a much more functional and pleasant place to be. Not everyone is going to do that, of course, but still, I feel motivated to tend my own garden. And when so much is out of our control, I believe that there's still soil to build and seeds to sow and an inevitable harvest to reap. So I really hope that you have some kind of garden that you're tending to.